ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track, and ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
This is Cop Talk, talking crime, cases, and backing the blue. Now, here are your hosts, Captain Ed Mehmet and Detective Kevin Schroeder.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cop Talk. My name is Kevin Schroeder, retired NYPD detective, and my co-host today, retired Captain Ed Mehmet, is somewhere patrolling. Not sure where. He may have went over to Israel to help out. I'm really not sure where he is right now, but I'm sure we will hear from him on our next episode. With that said, my co-host today, filling in, will be Joe Diamond, our executive producer. Joe, say hello.
Hey, everyone.
Today's guest is Betsy Brantner Smith. Betsy is the National Police Association spokesperson. Welcome, Sergeant Betsy Smith.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be with you guys.
So, Betsy, you're a 30-year law enforcement veteran, retired in 2009, supervised the crime prevention unit, field training sergeant, supervised K-9 unit, crowd control bike team leader, served on crisis intervention teams. Anything else you've done?
Yeah.
Welcome.
I had a terrific 29-year career. I served in a community that really appreciated the law enforcement, and I served on a task force where I got to do quite a bit of work in the city of Chicago and around the region. So for a farm kid from Northern Illinois, it was quite a career.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like a career. Now, how many years did you do?
I did 29 years on the job, and I had a parallel career to my police career where I was a writer and then a trainer. I got some national level attention. And so when I retired off the job in 2009, I continued my training career, and I have trained in, I think, 5 different countries. I've trained people from 80 different countries, everything from leadership to officer survival. And I continue to do that in addition to my primary focus, which is being the spokesman for the National Police Association.
So, Betsy, tell our audience, tell us about the NPA's history and mission.
So the National Police Association it's a charity. It's not, it sounds like a kind of like a union or an association. It's actually a charity that was founded after the 2014 war on cops began. And what we do is we bring national attention to the anti-police efforts that are out there that are challenging effective law enforcement. So we do mailings. We have a fantastic newsletter that people can sign up for if they go to nationalpolice.org. We have national TV and radio spots. I have a national television show on cable and on streaming. We do legal filings on behalf of police officers or agencies. We have a ton of original articles that are on our website. We publish books. We have a podcast. And we get involved in helping, especially smaller agencies who, for example, you talk about K-9. A lot of smaller police departments can't afford body armor for their K-9s. So we'll do a grant and buy a K-9 vest, or we'll help a small agency start an Explorer program. It's just a really, really terrific organization that is out there trying to fight that false narrative that somehow it's American law enforcement that's the problem.
Right. Totally understood. Betsy, is there an update on the Doe versus Mickelson case? Mickelson?
So DeRay McKesson, if you're not familiar with him, you can find him on Twitter, on X now, at DERAY. Now, he's blocked me since about 2014, and he'll block anyone who jumps on there to dispute what he has to say. But there's been no update in that case as of recently. The case basically involves DeRay, who was a Black Lives Matter activist. An anonymous police officer sued him because he is trying to, and he actively talks about this on his social media, he actively tries to get law enforcement officers hurt in so many of these protests. And as we know, we had at least 260 violent protests in 2020 and on into 2021. But all anybody wants to talk about is what happened on January 6th. So there have been no updates, but DeRay McKesson right now has switched his focus to apparently fighting Donald Trump and also trying to prop up Hamas. And that's what Black Lives Matter is doing right now, is they are putting out pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah, in other words, pro-terrorist propaganda now as Israel continues to fight the war that was started against them on October 7th.
Right. And is any other big cases in the pipeline you're working on?
Well, the National Police Association, we were the first organization that sued to get the Covenant school shooter manifesto released to the public. If everyone recalls, we had several people were murdered by a transgender she's a woman, a mentally ill woman who apparently believes she is a man. And she went into the Nashville Covenant School, murdered several people, including a child. And law enforcement found this huge manifesto in addition to weapons and things like that. And they would not release the manifesto. And the National Police Association was the first of several groups who sued the Nashville Police Department to release this manifesto. Nashville PD turned over that manifesto to the FBI, to the Biden administration, and the FBI is refusing to release it. So we have to wonder what is in that manifesto. And what we have heard is that it is so incredibly violent and makes trans activism look so incredibly violent that the FBI does not want it to release, does not want that released. So we've got that going on. We also sued, we filed a FOIA request, multiple FOIA requests, and sued the Biden administration because if everyone recalls, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and other politicians wrongly accused Border Patrol agents who were doing mounted patrol of quote unquote whipping Haitian migrants. There was an investigation. It was determined that not only were those Border Patrol agents not whipping the migrants, indeed, these Haitian migrants were trying to harm the agents and their horses. What we were just simply trying to do was get the correspondence between the White House, Secretary Mayorkas, Border Patrol management, and to see if this persecution, if you will, of these Border Patrol agents was political in nature. And so we're still working on that case as well. So that's what the National Police Association does. We get involved. We'll file amicus briefs, FOIA requests to try and support not just law enforcement, but also pro-law enforcement citizens who have an interest in discovering what's really happening behind the scenes.
So, Betsy, let's go back a bit. What inspired you to become a cop?
Everybody always asks that question, right? Every cop in the world gets that question.
Of course.
And it's funny because, when you answer that question, when you're doing your initial interviews, when I was a 21-year-old college student and I'm interviewing to be a cop, it's always, I want to help people. I want to give back to my community. All those answers. The reality was, as a farm kid growing up in the 60s and into the 70s, I watched a lot of TV, and in the 70s, it was cop shows and doctor shows. And
Charlie's Angels.
And I'm even in Charlie's Angels for sure, but I'm even before Charlie's Angels.
Okay.
Angie Dickinson, Policewoman, Adam 12, shows like that. And so I wanted to be an LA cop, right? Streets of San Francisco, all those shows.
I remember that show, Michael Douglas.
Exactly.
Paul Malden.
And so that's what I thought, I wanted to be. And as a woman, you didn't see many women cops in real life. And so when I was 2 weeks out of college, and I find myself in the Chicago suburbs and in the Cook County Sheriff's Police Academy. So it was a big shocker. But I still, to this day, even with everything that's happening, I constantly talk to young people and tell them this is such a great job. It's a great career because you never have the same day twice.
Very true. Very true.
I'm not a cop. I'm a civilian, obviously a big law enforcement supporter. But I would think that most cops at one point or another, it was a movie or it was a TV show. I would think that that's probably the common link. Something they saw as a kid and they're like, oh, wow, I can do this in real life. I can be a hero in real life. Let me ask you, how did you get involved with the National Police Association?
So I have written for virtually every large police website that's out there, and trained for a couple of big name companies. We own our own training company now. And but I started writing for the National Police Association because they just have these incredible authors, and they put out constant new material. And so I got asked to, in July of 2020, there was a case in California that the National Police Association got involved with. It was a case where Black Lives Matter activists got permission from the city of, I believe it was San Jose, got permission to paint on the street in front of City Hall these 32-foot high letters spelling out Black Lives Matter. One of the letters was a depiction of a terrorist, a cop murderer named Assata Shakur. And so the National Police Association saw that, and they said, this is a hostile work environment that working cops have to walk by an artist's rendering of a cop killer, convicted cop killer, every day. So they got involved in that case, and they asked me to speak to the media about it. And I said, sure, I'll do that. And so this is during the pandemic. So it's a Zoom situation. And I didn't know that much about Zoom at that time. And so I did the interview, and then I got asked to do another interview. And then they contacted me and said, hey, how would you like to be our spokesman? And I said, yeah, I love TV and I love to talk. And so I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. And the thing is, I think one of the reasons that they were attracted to me and I was attracted to this position is I'm basically uncancelable. I am retired, because people, when I started talking, because back then, in 2020, I was spending a lot of time talking to Black Lives Matter activists, Antifa, the cable news likes to pit you against people. And so my poor chief, where I haven't worked there since 2009 and I don't live there anymore, but my poor chief's getting phone calls from people saying, you need to fire. Why is this sergeant doing that? And I make it very clear that I'm retired. And then they started calling the training company that I'm affiliated with. Well, guess who owns the training company? Oh, that would be me. I'm the sole owner. And so right. I got attacked on social media. We got, we got attacked. via the telephone, all kinds of stuff. We had to fortify our home. And, but I kept moving forward, and, it's been a really, really wonderful 3.5 years because it's a great organization that I believe in.
Ladies, you'll end up shopping for your guy's deodorant, right? So try Degree's Original Cool Rush. You see, last year, Degree changed the formula, and men were mad. One guy even started a petition. So Degree admitted they messed up and brought the Original Cool Rush scent back. It's clean, crisp, and actually smells like someone you want to cuddle. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So toss one in your cart and find out why it's the best-selling men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory.
The #1 selling product of its kind with over 20 years of research and innovation. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
Clorox Sentiva smells like grapefruit. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
Okay, we could be here all day. Try Clorox Sentiva for a trusted clean with long-lasting freshness. Also available in lavender and coconut. Use as directed.
Faraday presenta Ojos con Alergia y Picazón contra el jardinero. Y el ganador es Faraday Extra Fuerte. Para aliviar la picazón de los ojos por alergia, actúa más rápido y supera a Claritin y Flonase aún a las 24 horas. Faraday, adelante.
I think as every cop and every activist knows, you're really not doing anything in this world until you start making enemies. So,
I know that's so true. There's a great piece of video on our website where I am, I'm on, it's either BBC or Russia Today, where I'm debating, and I didn't know I was going to be doing it. I'm debating some Black Lives Matter activists who wanted to talk about the Breonna Taylor case, and he had every single fact about the Breonna Taylor case wrong. I mean, the only thing he had right was her name. And boy, I'll tell you, it got incredibly frustrating, but I'm grateful for that opportunity to get to set the record straight. And I talked to, because I'm still an active police trainer out there, I talk to just hundreds and hundreds of cops every year who say, boy, Sarge, it's so nice to turn on the news and see somebody supporting us and speaking our language and standing up for us.
Yeah, Betsy, I think every city, state, and even federal agencies have this issue right now. But what is your opinion on how do we address the crisis in recruitment, retention, and morale throughout the country in law enforcement?
Well, that's a great question because, the Department of Justice, it's the Bureau of Justice Assistants and the COPS office. So it ultimately comes from the DOJ, just came out with this big report that they've been working on since April about how to recruit and retain more cops. And when you read the report, basically, there's a quote from Merrick Garland where he talks about all these lofty things that we need to do. We need to engage the community and this and that. In other words, all the things that we've been doing since the 70s. What that report really failed to talk about was the need for police leadership and for politicians to stand up unequivocally and verbalize their support for the American law enforcement officer. That is the one thing that we are still lacking. I mean, you're seeing right now a change in the rhetoric from even defund the police. Mayors like Mayor London Breed are saying, we've got to start holding up, lifting up the American law enforcement officer. But there's still not enough strong talk denouncing the people who have spent the last 3 years demonizing and vilifying the American law enforcement officer. So until we have politicians, police leaders, and the media doing everything they can to denounce all the prior rhetoric that somehow law enforcement is the problem, I don't think you're going to see a significant change in the recruiting and retaining of law enforcement officers.
Yeah, I agree. Good luck with that. But, that brings me to my next question. How do we get the public more involved with supporting law enforcement?
Well, you know what? That's another great question. And again, that's why the National Police Association exists. People can go to our website, nationalpolice.org, and see some of the many pro-police programs we have that citizens can do at a local level. You can donate to our association, but you can also see some of the suggestions that we have on our website. One of the great things we have right now is we have a mobile billboard that is traveling this country. We were just in Manhattan a couple of weeks ago. And then earlier this week, we're in Phoenix, Arizona. And it's a mobile billboard that basically highlights the heroic nature of police officers. And then law enforcement needs to, first of all, continue to do what we've always done, which is engage in community policing. But what I want people to understand is when your police department is defunded, in other words, and most police departments were, when money was taken out of police departments' budgets 3 years ago and 2 years ago, and cops started to leave this job, one of the first programs to be eliminated is community policing. So we need, we need community policing to continue to garner support. So again, I go back to police leadership. There's a big divide in law enforcement between the managers and leaders in our agencies and the boots on the ground cops. It's less so in sheriff's departments. Sheriffs, because they're elected by the people, tend to be more pro boots on the ground cops. But we have seen since 2014, and especially since 2020, we have seen so many police chiefs and police leaders who were doing absurd things. I mean, you saw this in New York and LA and Chicago, literally laying down in front of Black Lives Matter protesters. One of the things that police leaders could do right now to help boost morale and also show the public that they are behind their cops and behind the criminal justice system is to denounce organizations like the Black Lives Matter Global Action Network. They have been exposed as what they have always been, which is just a Marxist grift whose goal is not to uplift African Americans in this country. It is to enrich a few. And now, as we are seeing since October 7th, to support terrorism in this country and around the world. Black Lives Matter Chicago, posted a pro-Palestinian logo that they then took down of it was depicting a paraglider a pro-Palestinian paraglider with the Palestinian flag. That was the first attack on a peace concert on October 7th in Israel. I haven't seen a lot of police leaders apologizing for embracing Black Lives Matter, and I haven't seen a lot of them denouncing that depiction by Black Lives Matter Chicago. So the lines have been drawn. Police leaders need to get behind their cops, because that ultimately means they are getting behind their law-abiding citizens. Most people aren't criminals. We've got to go back to recognizing that, denouncing the few and supporting the majority of Americans who just want to live peaceful lives and have enough cops in their communities to answer 911 calls when they need it.
Sure, we couldn't agree more here. Cop Talk with that statement. Joe?
Betsy, to wind it down, let me ask you a big question. It touches on some of the things you just mentioned. America is going to be 250 years old in a few years, but we're at the mother of all crossroads. The border catastrophe, rampant crime and urban collapse. As you mentioned, we're seeing a pro-Hamas movement in the streets of America itself. Does law enforcement need to take have an expand? Does it need to have a larger view of itself in the coming years? Like, do we need to redefine law enforcement, before the whole country just collapses?
Well, it is a big question. Every law enforcement officer in this country, one of the first things they do when they get hired is raise their right hand and take an oath to the Constitution of the United States. And one of the things that we need to go back to is understanding the role of the United States Constitution in American law enforcement. And we hear a lot now, and you're right, we are at a precipice in the United States where you hear politicians and activists talk about that the Constitution is, it's fluid and it's malleable and all that. The Constitution is the Constitution. It is not to be messed with. It is not a flexible document. And I think what a lot of law enforcement officers are pondering, and we know this because, again, my husband and I travel this country and talk to law enforcement everywhere, is law enforcement officers now more than ever before, I think, are really pondering the constitutional nature of their job, of their duties. And that is something that in these coming times, every cop is going to have to really give some serious thought to. We are not supposed to be political. When I got hired, we were told, keep your politics to yourself. And that stayed through the majority of my 29 years as a cop. Now, unfortunately, everything is political. And one of the things that I always encourage police officers in this country to do when they're pondering who to vote for is don't look at the person, look at the policies. Don't vote against, in other words, your own interests as a law enforcement officer. So, yeah, you're right. These upcoming elections that we have one in November, and of course we have a big one coming up next November. We're going to all have to make some tough decisions about how the United States is going to move forward. And are we going to stick with our constitutional promise as law enforcement officers?
You're absolutely right. We have to get back to the rule of law. It's a bit of a paradox too, because as a lot of Supreme Court justices or some have said over the years, the Constitution is not a suicide pact, right? The Constitution has to be enforced, but it has to be, it has to contain its own survival, right? It has to be a mechanism for its own survival. So, somehow we got to get the message to cops out there also that, yes, you guys, you have a lot of discretion as far as enforcing the rule of law. It's not what the left tells you that, we got to take off the handcuffs. The Constitution gives you a lot of leeway in keeping America and keeping the rule of law alive.
Well, and I think a lot of cops saw during the early months of the pandemic, they saw what it was like to be used by politicians. And I don't think that will happen again. When you saw those videos of cops having to shut down outdoor church services and handcuffing, moms because they took their kids to a park. I always have people ask me, why did they do that? Well, because, the people elect the politicians, and then the politicians ultimately tell the cops what to do. I think that woke a lot of people up to pay attention to what's happening locally. And I think it woke cops up to really understanding why the law enforcement system in the United States is supposed to be so decentralized. And I hope the American public realized that too. That's one of the best things about the law enforcement system in the United States is it is decentralized. It is run, locally and by city, by county, by state. And I think a lot of people realized, including cops, why you don't want solely a federal policing system in this country.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, Betsy, can cops, so there's about 800,000 plus law enforcement officers in the United States. Is there a way to make cops, is there a way to unify cops without centralizing them, without interfering with federalism? Is there a way to give, every cop in this country a feeling that they're part of a unified movement?
We are always going to have differences in our, and a lot of it's regional. A cop in San Francisco, for example, is likely to have very different politics than a cop in Central Florida. But I do believe with shows like yours, with social media, with organizations like the National Police Association, I think we are coming together in a much more cohesive way, again, just to understand that. And I think people saw that after the death of George Floyd. George Floyd, we can argue whether he was murdered or not, but there were police officers that were convicted in that case. But police officers, all 800,000 of them were blamed by so many people for the death of one drug addict in Minneapolis. I think that woke a lot of cops up. I think that started with the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, a young gangbanger who was trying to disarm a cop and got shot because of it. Again, that was one police officer and one bad guy. And that was one police officer, Darren Wilson, who didn't do a damn thing wrong, but still lost his career. And so did his wife, who was also a cop, despite being exonerated. I think that woke a lot of cops up to start thinking more nationally, as opposed to, oh, well, that's not going to affect me, because the actions and the reaction, I really should say, the reaction of, activists and dishonest media and things to police actions around the country, those actions tend to endanger all of us, all of law enforcement. Let's not forget we had 2 cops murdered in New York, 5 cops murdered in Dallas, Texas, in the name of Black Lives Matter, because of, in part, by a dishonest media and dishonest politicians. But I will say that I do think that's changing. I think cops are noticing. And so we are coming together more as that thin blue line. And I think our community members are joining us. I think that's what's so heartening. That's why the National Police Association is so successful, because it's citizens that make us successful. And so that's what I would urge cops to pay attention to what's happening nationally, because we all really do have to stand together with our communities, because again, for the last 3 years, look at what's happening. The more cops leave, who gets killed? Our citizens. Homicides are up, robberies are up, crime is up all around this country. So we've got to support each other to ultimately support our communities that we're trying to keep safe.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel? Or that white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
Shopping is hard.
I can never find anything in my size.
I don't even know my size.
I buy my clothes the same place I buy my groceries.
There's a better way. Make it easy with Stitch Fix. Just share your size, style, budget, and done. Your personal stylist sends pieces picked just for you.
That was easy.
Stitch Fix. Online personal styling for everyone. Free shipping and returns. No subscription required. Get started today at stitchfix.com.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 3 couples, 4 vacations, a lot to unpack. Watch The 4 Seasons, a new series starring comedy favorites Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, and more in a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long-term relationships. Based on the original Alan Alda film. Watch The 4 Seasons, streaming now only on Netflix.
Hey guys, finding the perfect gift for the food lover in your life is easy, thanks to Goldbelly. Goldbelly ships America's most iconic foods, straight from world-famous restaurants right to your door. So if you want to treat someone to Joe's Stone Crab from Miami, Franklin Barbecue from Texas, or desserts from famous foodies like Ina Garten or Martha Stewart, Goldbelly has you covered, with free shipping anywhere in the country. Just go to goldbelly.com and for a limited time, get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT. That's promo code GIFT.
Very true. You know what's sad too, Betsy, is when a police officer is killed in the line of duty, you don't see the outrage. You don't see the protests. You don't see the demonstrations. You don't see them shutting down streets in outrage of a police officer being killed in the line of duty. However, the other way around, they're always out there an excuse to just go and demonstrate and cause havoc. And I'm not sure about the town you're from, but in New York City, you need a permit to protest or to have a demonstration. And lately, it seems like they're protesting without permits, and they're not really being arrested as quickly as they should.
Well, and that's the thing. And in most jurisdictions, you have to have some kind of a permit to protest. I mean, I was the crowd control bike sergeant. We would have, the anarchists would come, every year and protest. They basically protested capitalism. They didn't like capitalism, as they all pulled up in SUVs and with their daddy's credit card and stuff. But, if they didn't have a permit, we just immediately arrested everybody. And that was the end of it. Now you're right. There's all these pop-up protests. Yep. And we don't really do anything about it. Although I will say that I think we're seeing a fatigue in people, and right now there's, thanks to Tucker Carlson, more information has come out about George Floyd and how he really died. We just had a video release of a traffic stop out in Georgia where a police officer had to shoot a man from Florida who just gotten out of prison And he was a quote unquote unarmed black man, but now and Benjamin Crump, of course, is on the ground there trying to, stir everything up he can. But you're not seeing that gain a whole lot of traction because I think people are getting weary of that. And I'll tell you what, the National Police Association, we did polling with Rasmussen a couple of years ago about the violent riots, the violent anti-police riots. And most people in this country, they wanted all the violent riots, the 260 violent riots in the name of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and Antifa. They wanted them investigated just as rigorously as the 4-hour riot on January 6th at our nation's capital. So I think there's a fatigue and people are trying to say, wait a minute, we can't have this 2-tiered, 3-tiered justice system. And we're tired of being lied to. I think people are paying attention to what's happening.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you there. Betsy, switching gears a little bit, along with your husband, you created the Street Survival for Women seminar and also the Winning Mind for Women, Career and Technical Survival for Women in Law Enforcement. Why don't you tell us about that?
So my husband is a very well-known police trainer in our profession. His name is Dave Smith, and you can find him on Police One and officer.com and Law Officer, other websites. And but he created a character called JD Buck Savage back in the 80s, and that catapulted him into an international training career. And so when he and I were working for the Law Enforcement Television Network, who eventually bought another training company called Caliber Press, we created a class called Street Survival for Women, and we morphed that into a class called the Winning Mind for Women, because what we do is, we have done a great deal of research on gender differences. In other words, the differences between men and women and how that affects how we communicate, how we fight physically, how we shoot, all of those things. You hear a lot of talk now. In fact, going back to our discussion about recruitment, you hear a lot of talk about we need to recruit more women into this profession. That's a great idea, but we can't lower standards to do that. What we believe we need to do is understand the differences between men and women. So one of the differences that we talk about a lot is women are natural communicators. So why not use that when we're talking about de-escalation and things like that? So we have a lot of fun. I travel around the country and we teach the Winning Mind for Women. We talk a lot about officer survival and leadership. We also have a class that's morphed out of that class called The Truth About Gender Differences, where again, we teach police leaders and police trainers the differences between men and women, which I never thought would be a controversial thing to talk about until about the last year. So that's a pretty fascinating twist in our training business. But I was even taking that into that truth about gender differences into the Pentagon. I was going to the Pentagon 2 or 3 times a year until this current administration to talk about that. I just taught in Tbilisi, Georgia, a portion of that Winning Mind for Women class. I also taught a class about police and the media. If folks don't know where Georgia is, it's very close to Ukraine and Russia and Kazakhstan. And so we had police officers, female police officers from that region. And it was pretty fascinating to have Russian police officers on one side of the room and Ukrainian police officers on the other side of the room, and see the differences in policing from that region to, the United States.
Tbilisi, Georgia, big historical trivia question there. What infamous leader grew up in Tbilisi, Georgia? Anybody know?
No, but I can tell you that Tbilisi, Georgia is the birthplace of wine, and that's why I'm going to go back.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. Also the birthplace of Joseph Stalin.
I did know that. You're right. You're right. They in talking to the Georgians, we got into quite a discussion about that. And I'll tell you, when I gave a keynote on International Women's Day talking about police and the media, and I was talking about how the American media, I gave them very different instances of how they just flat out lied about police officers, just absolutely lied. And I had a bunch of the Russian police women come up to me afterwards and ask me if those journalists who lied about American law enforcement were still in prison or had they gotten out. And it really highlighted again, going back to the Constitution, right? It really highlighted the differences in our, not just in our current systems, but in our history, right?
Sure. Hey, Betsy, can you tell our audience if they wanted to get involved with the National Police Association, how to go about that?
Absolutely. So we encourage everybody to go to nationalpolice.org. That's nationalpolice.org. We also have a wonderful Facebook presence and a fantastic presence on X, formerly known as Twitter. Our Twitter handle on X is at Nat Police Assoc, ASSOC. And I'll tell you what, our Twitter, our X is just filled with fantastic articles, breaking news about law enforcement. And we also have a terrific YouTube page. I have a show called the NPA Report, and that airs every Sunday morning on the streaming network, the First TV. It also airs on Pluto and DirecTV. It's called the NPA Report. And it's just, I have all kinds of just interesting people and police leaders. My last guest last week was a guy named Jason Jones, who is one of the foremost border experts in this country. And we talk about all kinds of different things. So go to nationalpolice.org and you can see all the terrific things we do. And you can find out where our mobile billboard's going to be next.
Sounds great. Looking forward to seeing you back in New York City with that billboard. Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith, thank you so much for being our guest today on Cop Talk. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe to Cop Talk, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Cop Talk WABC. That's at Cop Talk WABC. Until next time, everyone be safe out there. Thank you.